House, and I look forward to others' comments on this bill. Thank you.
I call the Honourable Meka Whaitiri.
E te manga te whare, tēnā koe o tira, ngā mea mo te whare nei tēnā tātou katoa. Well, Madam Speaker, you can't have it both ways. I've heard comments made on that side that this side isn't bringing enough bills through the House, and then when we do take a bill that was introduced by that side of the House and improve it, we still can't get any sense from that side, Madam Speaker. Can I say that I'm pleased, Madam Speaker, to speak in support of the third reading of the Maritime Transport Amendment Bill, and want to commend Minister Genter for bringing it to the House. As she said, Madam Speaker, there are three parts to this bill, and I want to make this opening comment to say that all commercial maritime operators that travel in our waters should not only operate, Madam Speaker, legally, but should also operate without risk of drug and alcohol impairment. And this is what this bill is doing. And so I do want to acknowledge that we need legislation that's going to enable it. Like the Minister said, there are three parts to this bill. Madam Speaker, the first part obviously covers the drug and alcohol testings, and I will come back and make some comments around that. Also the oil pollution and limitation of liability part of the Act, and of course the last one, the Miscellaneous Amendments Act. And this bill, just to remind us, Madam Speaker, is to manage the risk associated with drug and alcohol use in the commercial maritime sector by requiring maritime operators to have drug and alcohol management plans, or in other words, DAMPs, DAMPs. The bills also aim to increase the amount of compensation available to meet the cost of major spills from oil tanker in New Zealand waters, and we only have to look at our recent Rena disaster on, may I say, Madam Speaker, on Mōtiti Island, which I fortunately have the ministerial delegations as part of my associate local government delegations in that respect. Then the bill also aims, Madam Speaker, to allow New Zealand to exercise its right as a party of the protocol to 1996 to amend the Convention on Limitation of Liability for Marine Claims to make reservations that exclude limitation of liability for claims relating to wreck removal, cargo removal and damage caused by hazardous and noxious substance. The bill also aims to allow foreign registered ships to carry freight to non-mainland ports, including the Chatham Islands. It also aims to add flexibility to the Minister of Transport's maritime rulemaking powers, make minor amendments to the Act in relation to local regulation of maritime activity and the availability of documents incorporated in maritime and marine protection rules. And finally, Madam Speaker, the Act aims to clarify the Act's definition and words. And there's been many comments in this debate over the second and the committee stage, Madam Speaker, around how we make the drug testing mandatory. And I'm pleased to say that the SOP, introduced again by the Minister, removes that. And there's a really good reason why we're doing that. If you look at the regulatory impact statement of the officials who supported the introduction of this bill, Madam Speaker, they could not find any evidence. In fact, what they said is that this regulatory impact statement has made a number of assumptions. This is because we do not know the true extent of any problem with alcohol or drug impairment in the aviation, maritime or rail sectors. So, the own officials were saying that there wasn't any research, Madam Speaker, to justify compulsory drug and alcohol testing. And so, unfortunately, under the former government, they didn't do their homework well enough. And that's been exposed by Minister Genter in terms of the SOP. So I do want to acknowledge that the reading and research in this particular part, Madam Speaker, of the drug and alcohol testing is the practical and logistics side of many smaller cargo operators throughout New Zealand. And the concern that I believe was expressed at the Select Committee, Madam Chair, around logistically for the smaller maritime operators of actually allowing them to have the ability to drug and test their own operators. The assertion here, Madam Speaker, was it was just practically, logistically untenable for some of the smaller operators. Just for the House's information, most of our maritime operators in New Zealand are quite small. They're not large companies, they're small and often self-owners in the space, Madam Speaker. So to put extra cost on some of our smaller operators, I think, would lead to a whole lot of financial hardship, Madam Speaker. So in terms of the part one around the drug and alcohol testings, I think we've got it just right in this bill. In terms of the oil pollution and limitation of liability, as the Minister said, the intention there of the bill is to ensure that, the intention behind the bill is around introducing the supplementary fund protocol. She mentioned the additional tier of compensation, raising the compensation potential in the event of tanker spills from $411 million to $1.54 billion. Again, you know, goodness help us, we never have a RENA disaster in this country, but that lifting of compensation, Madam Speaker, will allow a true compensation for the damage that may occur going forward. So I do want to support that particular part of the bill. In terms of the third part of the bill, where we talk about the miscellaneous amendments, I'm not going to read them all. The Minister did canvass them in her contribution, but I do want to pick up on one particular point in the miscellaneous amendments of this bill, Madam Speaker, and that's the miscellaneous measures which include the amendment to section 33M, the navigation bylaws, to facilitate space launch activities. This part, Madam Speaker, will enable launches over water to be carried out safely from a maritime standpoint. The amendment will allow regional councils to make navigational bylaws to control the use of ships in areas affected by space activities, and was prompted by the submission on the Outer Space and High Altitude Activities Bill. Madam Speaker, the reason why I raised that, because in my electorate of Ikaroa Rāwhiti, we've got a place called Rocket Launch, which is on the Mahia Peninsula just north of Wairoa. And we see that as an economic opportunity, but this bill ensures that those around that are also practising in a safe and lawful manner. So I wanted to raise that acknowledgement to rocket launch and the economic benefits that the region, like Wairoa and South Gisborne, are going to gain from that particular initiative that's happened in my electorate. Madam Speaker, in the last couple of minutes, I do want to acknowledge the work of the Select Committee. I myself was not on the Select Committee, but I want to acknowledge the membership of it, and it almost, Madam Speaker, reads like a National Party departure list. The list is so long in terms of those that have contributed to the bill. I do want to acknowledge the many submitters that came. The committee did. The bill was referred to the committee on the 16th of November last year, and that the submissions were held in February 2017, and there were 25 submitters and oral evidence from 11 submitters. So I want to acknowledge the work of the Select Committee in their thorough investigation of this particular bill. I want to acknowledge the Minister for bringing it into the bill, and for the SOP that she's introduced to ensure that that the self-regulation of the maritime operators is acknowledged, and that we eliminate any undue logistical burdens on the small operators throughout Aotearoa New Zealand. Madam Speaker, I commend the bill to the House.
I call Jonathan Young.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.